I'm sure many of you on here remember Maggie Clay, who is a dear, dear friend of mine still. We became friends during that service learning and just kind of kept up with each other when I was done. And after I graduated, we actually became roommates. And then in the fall of that year, there was an opening at WYN and she said, come on. And I said, okay. And so I've been here, it'll be 4 years in October. 3 of those years, I've been the lead programmer for our after school and summer camp programs.
It doesn't seem like 4 years. Let me just, I forgot to say this at the beginning. We're recording this session to post on our website. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that we're recording and we're comfortable with that. So Kiersten, thank you. It doesn't seem like 4 years. And so do you mind to explain to people who may not know kind of what your population is and how that program works?
Yeah, so when I first started, we used the buzzword at-risk students, and we've, I think the whole community of like serving youth has kind of moved away from that, and the way that I kind of talk about it now is kids who have faced adversity. We all are at risk for facing different things, but these are kids that we pretty much know have either faced adversity or faced trauma. And so we work with those students and their families. After school is primarily for just kind of a space for them to feel safe, to be themselves, to have adult relationships or relationships with trusted adults, because we know that that's one of the biggest things that can combat ACEs and different health problems that come from trauma. So that's our main goal with after school. And then our summer camp program has some of those same goals, but definitely have a bigger focus and ability to push students out of their comfort zones, to kind of teach them, when I feel these things, when I'm scared, when I'm nervous, I can push through those and I can be resilient and I can do the things that I want to do, even though I'm scared to do them. So that's kind of the population we work with and what our goals are for those 2 programs.
That's interesting that you say that the buzzwords used to be at risk and that you were moving away from that in our language. Somebody from WCCI sent me yesterday that then I sent out a blog or an article from NC Child talking about how at risk kind of implies that the blame is on them, and that we need to start saying things like furthest from opportunity and overburdened and under-resourced. And so when I heard that, it was, my mouth kind of dropped open a little bit, because as a social worker, I try to use strength-based language, but I hadn't heard that yet. And so that's really cool that y'all are already aware of that and trying to change your language and how it might reflect on the population that you're working with.
I always think too, like, what would my kids want me to say? If they heard me talking about what WYN is and who we serve, and I said at risk, would they kind of be like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And facing adversity, I mean, I know from the conversations I've had with our kids, they're like, oh yeah, that's me for sure. So kind of bringing them into what they would want to hear too.
And I saw Candace leaning closer to the screen. Candace, when we're talking to people about trauma and resilience, she's been partial to facing adversity, because some people may think of trauma as this really big, that only happens to them. Candace, jump in. I'm not trying to speak for you, but what does it say? Furthest from opportunity. And so she has often incorporated the language facing adversity, because she feels like that's more inclusive of what people can relate to or understand.
Yeah.
So, all right, so you've talked a little bit about your program and the kids that you work with. Can you share with us some of the things that you see from, let's see, how am I trying to say this, ways that you see trauma manifesting with the kids that you work with?
Yeah, I always think after school is such a unique time to see our kids. For those of you that don't know, we do pick up our kids from the schools, with the exception last year we got Hardin Park to have a bus stop at our facility in Boone, which was a huge help to us, being able to more schools. We have the vans to go to more schools. But we're seeing them right at 2:30 when that bell rings. And it's such a unique time to see them because they have had their whole day. They've had either rushing to get ready in the morning, not knowing where their notebook is, not knowing where their shoes are, getting, rushed out of the house by mom and dad, whatever, to a really hard day at school, a really great day at school, a plethora of different things. And we always joke that every day and after school, we're kind of starting over with our kids because we only have them for a few hours out of their entire day. And those hours can be really impactful, but they also have a lot more time to either become shut down or amped up, which is the language that we've started using when talking about what their kind of mental and energy state is when they show up. But impulsive behavior is definitely the biggest one that we see, not only because they're middle school students for the most part, that's just kind of where they are and who they are for the most part developmentally, but as we know, trauma does really affect whether we can make sound, thoughtful decisions or not. So impulsive behavior is definitely the biggest one. Resistance to help with homework, resistance to being a part of the group. It can be a game that I know a student loves, and it is their favorite thing that we do, but if they're in either that amped up or shut down state, they're not going to do it, and it might not be enough to make their day better. So we have to work through a lot of those things, kind of helping them realize what's the root of my behavior today, what's kind of making me make these decisions. And I say to a lot of them, like, I know you. I've known you for a long time, and this is not you. What's going on? And that's kind of like a big reflection for them to say, oh, someone that does know me really well is saying I'm not acting like myself. Maybe I need to sit down and think about why I make these decisions. There's also a lot of talking. Our kids really just want to be heard by anyone, someone. And so getting them to kind of quiet down when they're supposed to be listening can be difficult. That definitely also has a factor in the impulsive behavior, but kind of just, I'm going to get attention anyway that I can.
Thanks for that. I'm just thinking about some of the kids that we've worked with before, and one thing that's interesting to me is the behavior that we hear about at home, the behavior that we see at school, and then the behavior that we hear about from WYN, and how sometimes those are all exactly the same, but most of the time they're not. And that it's interesting to me how behavior is a reflection of the different types of trust that people have in other places and people. And that's just an interesting thing to me, that y'all see it differently than sometimes we do when we're even working with the same kids.
Yeah, I know you and I have I come to you for everything, I feel, in the Heart and Part kids. And I'll say, like, they're just doing this and this and this, and what are y'all doing at school? And you're like, oh, they're not doing that at school. And I'm like, oh man, what is going on in that period from I get out of school to I show up at WYN? So sometimes it's figuring that out. Sometimes it's something on the bus that happens. Or, like I said, just the time of day can have a big effect on them. And I was going to add too that it's not always these big impulsive behaviors, like behavior issues. I don't like calling them that, but sometimes it's just wanting to be alone, or saying my stomach hurts, my head hurts, especially right before we leave to take them home. That's always a big red flag for me that something might be going on at home when that happens over and over again. So just wanted to add that sometimes it's not these big in-your-face behaviors. Sometimes they're a lot smaller and more internal.
Well, and that's interesting that you bring up the connection between trauma and physical symptoms, because the more we learn about it, and the kids who come back repeatedly to the nurse, and how her learning about trauma and resilience and how they manifest in her office, and how upset stomachs actually may be related to trauma more than a virus. So that's interesting. I also think another thing that's interesting to me is that it has to do with trust. And so I think sometimes the kids' level of trust with maybe us here at school and y'all, because it is more adults, less children with you, and just how behaviors change depending on their level of trust and their positive relationships with the adults. And Yeah, and I know we see more behavior issues in classrooms where there's maybe not as much trust or more personality clashes. So I think that has something to do with it too when we see different behaviors from kids. But your point's a good one that, and I feel this with my own children. They've been here all day trying to be good, sitting in a seat, maintaining expectations, and that pressure lets off a little bit. And that's when they maybe feel like they can fall apart or have an explosion, or they've got to get some of those emotions out. And so you may, be on the receiving end of some of that because they've been trying so hard to be good here for so long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're definitely lucky, and especially I went through my entire college career planning to be in a classroom and planning to work with kids in that setting. And so getting to have the unique opportunity that WYN gives me and my coworkers that work in the after school department, the ability to let them not be a good kid, and to not behave well, and to say like, okay, you're done, you made that choice, that's okay, like let's keep moving, let's keep going, and to be able to slow down and not worry about getting through this curriculum or getting this kid to understand this concept or something like that. It's just absolutely unique. Never thought that I'd be able to work with kids in that setting. And so it's very special to not have those added concerns or expectations on us as adults working with these kids. It definitely gives us a chance to let the meltdowns happen and to be patient with those.
And so you touched on a couple things as far as ways that y'all address trauma and build resiliency by letting them be able to have a meltdown or have a break. And so can you talk a little bit more about, I know having worked with y'all for a really long time, some of what y'all do is very structured and planned and black and white in policy, and then other things are kind of more responsive to individual kids. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we've kind of started coming up with this list of trainings that we want each new staff member to go through. And thankfully, luckily, everyone that we have right now has done them, and I feel so blessed, and I feel like we have such a strong team. But the biggest kind of relationship model that we have with adult to kid is love and logic. And so we kind of operate under that model when it comes to, asking kids to do something, giving expectations, and giving consequences if those expectations are broken. We do keep our policy very black and white, but then we get to have the creative freedom and that unique ability that I was just talking about when it comes to, okay, how do we consequence? How do we move forward from this broken expectation? We definitely don't want kids leaving WYN thinking that the world doesn't have rules and expectations, and if I break this, nothing's going to happen. But we do get to be really creative and restorative in how we respond to those broken expectations. So love and logic is a big one. My second big one is motivational interviewing. We all got trained. I got trained a year or two ago, and then got to retrain with the team that I have now. Unfortunately, right when self-isolation started, so they haven't gotten much practice with the kids, but that's a huge one of anybody that I think works with kids, especially from this population, should really look into motivational interviewing, because taking that burden away from, I want this kid to learn this expectation, to learn this life lesson, and if they don't, it's my fault. That was just a huge relief to me and a huge factor in how I started to build relationships with new kids. Of, I'm not here to make sure you don't mess up. I'm here to help you when you do. And it's not my fault if you mess up. Thanks, Candace. That's awesome. So motivational interviewing is a huge one. It's one that mainly counselors and therapists use, but as Denise, we definitely get put in that position, don't have the training or the background at all, but sometimes that's how we get treated by our kids and families. And so that's a big help with that one. So we use those techniques. The third one is we attended the Reconnect for Resiliency training in December last year, right before everything started. And that is another huge one, much more related to directly helping students. So for example, we did get to have a summer camp this summer, and it was great, and I loved it. So some things from Reconnect for Resilience is all about getting in touch with how your body responds to those things like, oh, my stomach hurts, that sort of thing, and what we can do in that moment to reset our nervous system so that our body feels okay, because that's what's going to tell our brain to come back online and to make those better informed decisions. And so they have things called rapid resets. And one of the big ones is to take a drink of water and feel it go all the way down your throat and into your stomach. And this summer I had a kid who was getting really upset during a game of kickball because he felt like his teammates they didn't care enough. They didn't care as much as he did. They weren't playing as hard as he was, and he was getting red in the face, yelling, crying, all of these things. And I said, hey, why don't you go take a sip of water, let me know if it's too cold. And he said, no, I'm not drinking that. I'm not drinking water. I don't want water. But he was dedicated to his team. I have to hand it to him. He was sliding into bases and all of these things. He was playing really hard. And I noticed that he had kind of scuffed up his leg a little bit. And I said, well, why don't you wash your leg off with some water? And if it's too cold, we'll get you some warmer water to wash your leg off. And so just that instance of, oh, I feel that temperature on this body part kind of reset him. And then he was able to tell me about a time that he did an amazing play in a baseball game, and how his mom was there and his mom was proud of him, and it completely reset his nervous system. I think that's the best example I have of getting to use that training with a kid, and actually seeing that nervous system get reset and just his whole day changed. It was awesome. So then we kind of taken all of these and combined them into what we call our checklist for success at WYN. And so each kid was given a notebook, and we have, oh, I'm sorry.
Kiersten, will you say that again? I got that we combined them all into, sometimes your voice is harder for me to hear. Do you mind, we combine these all into what? Say that part again for me.
I'm sorry. We combine all of those, the Love and Logic, motivational interviewing, and Reconnect for Resilience into one kind of tool that we use with our kids. And so we call it our checklist for success. And so it's kind of like a framework of a checklist, and it has 5 steps, and then each kid gets to kind of customize the steps for themselves. So our first step was to recognize that you need to go be alone for a minute. You're getting upset, or you might be shutting down. You want to be by yourself. Go take a minute. And we have a bunny. Her name's Pocket. That we rescued from the Humane Society that's at WYN with the kids. And so we have a bunny room, and they could go in there, they could pet Pocket, they could talk to her. There's art supplies in there, there's kinetic sand and Play-Doh. So that's just kind of like a go take a minute to do something with your hands and really kind of get reset. If they come back and either they're still upset, or maybe it works for a little bit, but then maybe they get upset again really quickly, then they go on to step 2, and that would be to a mindfulness exercise. So like a 4 to 8 breathing, a yoga pose, something that they can even run around the building just to kind of get the breath going really quickly, so they kind of have to think about how they're breathing. We tried mindfulness with our kids, a curriculum of mindfulness, and it was not the most successful. It was not their favorite thing. In the middle of doing that curriculum was when we got trained for resiliency, and we were like, oh, the kids are gonna dig this a little bit more, even though they're related. They don't see it that way. And so we've kind of incorporated mindfulness in that way and do those breathing techniques more casually. The third item on that list is to go talk to a staff member that's in the office. So our kids, anytime you tell a kid, hey, you're not supposed to go back there, that's where they want to be. So when they're in after school, they're supposed to be in the gym primarily, unless we're doing homework somewhere else, but they always want to go talk to people that work in our offices at our facility, just to say hi, just to say something funny, to get a reaction. So they got to pick what staff member they would want to go talk to for 10 minutes if they make it to step 3, just to go back. And we obviously talked to the staff and said, hey, we want to do this, and they were more than willing. They said, yeah, we'd love to talk to kids when they're upset. So just to kind of get them into, all of this is getting them into a new space, getting them into a different physical setting, so that they can kind of reset. So they have that. If that doesn't work, we have iPads that they can watch videos or listen to music. So they get to pick, our kids love ASMR, which I find hilarious. They all have their videos that they want to show us all the time. So they can watch one of those, they can listen to a song, something like that, and that's in our conference room. So again, another physical space that they can kind of go to. And then if all those things don't work, they are more than welcome to come to us and say, hey, Kiersten, I've tried all of these things and I am just still so upset. I'm really angry, something like that. Can I just go home today? And we say, yeah, absolutely. Go get your stuff. We're going to take you home real quick. We don't make it a big deal. We just say everyone needs breaks. We take days off of work when we're not feeling our best because we know that we need a break for our mental and physical health. And we want you all to learn that skill and learn that sometimes you have to try other things first, but eventually if those things don't work, it's okay to take a day off. And our goal when we first started this checklist was we had kids that would get really angry and the first thing out of their mouth was, I want to go home, and we couldn't get them to try anything else. But then we also had kids that we would say, hey, it seems like it would be a really good idea for you to take a break today and maybe go home early, kind of take an evening to yourself and come back tomorrow and try again. And they're like, no, I'm fine. Let's just go play. And so those steps are there for those kids to kind of realize themselves, oh, yeah, I do need to go home. So again, very restorative instead of saying, oh, you made this decision and now we have to suspend you tomorrow or something like that. They have these steps that they have created and customized so that they can make that decision on their own.
You and I have never talked about that checklist for success. It reminds me a lot of the calm corners that we're doing in schools now and how we teach them a rating scale of their emotions, 1 being the best, 5 being, I need out of here, I need to talk to an adult. And at 3, giving them seat skills to do, nobody can tell what they are. They recognize in themselves their emotions, and then there's breathing and all these things they can do at their seats. And then at 4, they get to go to the calm corner, and there's stress balls and relaxation coloring books and liquid motion toys and stuff. They have 5 minutes over there. And then if it just continues to escalate or it's too much for them to do on their own, then they can ask for an adult for help. And so it's been interesting for me because to put in a calm corner, we work with the teacher and the kids. The teacher has to be present for the training, and the kids too. We've done it with kids as young as 5, and they, all age kids respond to it really well. One of the things that we discovered that was the most powerful when we were doing one of these trainings one day was we taught it was 7th graders, taught them the 5-point scale and said, now everybody without looking around, just hold up the number that you're feeling right now. And fully expecting I was that most of the kids would be 1 and 2s and maybe, a 1, 3 or 1, 4. 50% of them were 3s and 4s, and a few of them were 5s, feeling like internally, I'm not going to get through this moment right now. I'm about to explode. That was only a couple years ago, really changed my life about how well we are able to hide from one another what's going on inside of ourselves. And so we've really liked kind of making it normal that people have big emotions. And when we put in the calm corners, we talk to the kids about your teacher may be in the calm corner one day because, we're trying to leave for work and the dog runs away and we spill our coffee and somebody hits us in the parking lot. And so your teacher may need a brain break or to go, do some seat skills or breathe or something like that. And that's okay because we all need help managing our emotions sometimes. So just having a culture of whatever is happening is okay, and here's how you can get through that. And so you're talking about 2 different things. You're talking about this is the way we see trauma and the things that we do to address it, but you're also building resiliency at the same time. So and like I said, I didn't know that before you just explained all that to me. So that's really cool. So you said go ahead, what?
I was just going to say we rolled it out towards the middle of last fall, and so we didn't get a lot of time to do it with them, but the time that we did, at first we had a lot of pushback oh my gosh, why are we doing this? But then we would have kids say, well, we're not always at WYN, so what can I do when we're at the library doing homework? And we were like, oh my gosh, that's a great question. Let's make a checklist for you for when you're at the library. And they say, well, sometimes we go to the park. What can I do at the park? What can I do at home? And so they really took it, some of them, and started making it their own. It was really awesome to see.
I do think not just for kids from trauma, but I think there's this, you're either fine or you're explosive. and not a lot of resources for in between. And so just giving kids and adults ways to handle the in betweens is really powerful for them. Somebody put in the chat that they would like to see the installation of a calm corner. And actually, Candace and I just filmed one of those because we now have 82 calm corners and have the money for another 40. And so what we've realized is we can't go back around every August and retrain all the new classrooms. So we've made a video. And so if we ever get back to in person of WCCI, we could do that in person. And if it looks like we're not for a while, then we can share that video with y'all, because it's really powerful the way kids respond to it, and adults too. So you mentioned 4 things: love and logic, reconnect for resilience, motivational interviewing, checklist for success. Any other big ones that y'all use?
Those are our 4 biggest tools, definitely. And then underlying all of these things is just our relationship with our kids. Again, being in this unique place where we get to just have fun with them every day in the afternoon and check in on them, and it can really be about them, is what we're here for. And so, and like you were talking about with trust and things like that, I think the biggest reason that these things work is because under that, we're trying to build as many relationships and the strongest relationships that we can with all of our kids. And sometimes we fail at that. We're not, 100% all the time. We try really hard though. But definitely that is our biggest building block for the rest of these things. But those are our big ones for sure.
I like that you mentioned joy in playing. And so I think, especially for parents, but just humans in general, we're so focused on the producing and got to get this done and all the boxes to check. And has everybody done everything they're supposed to do? I think sometimes we lose the joy in the playing. And when one of the activities that we do at the start of meetings is connecting to a moment of joy, building a new pathway, and thinking about those moments. And I'm aware that in some circles where I were to do that, that may not be a memory that you can find very quickly or easily. And so whether joy or happy or peace, trying to help people connect to those positive things that they had. And also another thing that reminded me of is way back, I don't know, it's probably been 10, 15 years ago, I was involved with a movement in this county where we tried to find funding for families that we were working with who could not afford, any kind of fun activities. They can't go to the movies. They don't have a car to go to the park. And one of the things that we operated on was it's very hard to maintain emotional regulation and equilibrium when you never get to have fun. And so I think that's a really good point that you bring up, is that it's probably a really critical part of your relationship with them is that y'all play and have fun. And so they get to have some positive connections to y'all as mentors and role models that sometimes parents don't even get to do.
Yeah, again, it's so unique and such a fun and joyful way to work with kids. Jen, our executive director, Jennifer Warren, makes this analogy. I can't remember where she read it. She's great about referencing people, and I am not, but about like withdrawals and deposits. And so if I can deposit a ton of positive energy into kids, then when I have to say, no, I really need you to sit down and do your homework, and that's my one big withdrawal for the day, that goes miles with our kids. And again, I've recognized that I'm in a very easy place to make a lot of deposits and one big withdrawal probably every day with the kids. I don't have to make too many. So yeah, it's so fun.
That's a good point, that it's a unique relationship that y'all get to have with them. So moving into things that you use for your own, because we've worked together with a lot of different kids, and I know how intense it is here. I can imagine how intense it is there. And so one of my big passions has become, what's the thing that encourages us to take care of ourselves, that we can build our own resilience and our emotional wellness. And so can you share with us some of the things that you do to do those things for yourself, stay well and healthy, and regulate your emotions and manage the stress of being so heavily invested in these kids?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I want to say I'm not great at it all the time. Most of the time, I'm probably not as great as my loved ones would like me to be. But talking, to my loved ones about, my job's hard. And it took a long time for me to be able to say that and not feel weird about it, or kind of like I was complaining, or I don't know what the right word is. But people from the outside can look at this job and say, oh, you play dodgeball and give snacks out. Like, of course kids love you. But it's really hard, and there's an emotional toll that it takes when you love a kid so much and just things are not great for them. And so having those people at home, calling my mom, talking to my fiance when I'm home, and just saying, like, today was hard, and them saying, okay, like, what's going on? Let's, talk about it. What do you need? People asking me right out, what do you need? What can I do? Is huge for me, and being able to communicate that to them, saying, hey, when I'm upset, this is what you need to ask me. Took a long time to figure out, but it was really helpful. I love spending time with my dog and crocheting on the couch. I know a lot of people say, oh, I meditate and do yoga and I go for a run every day. I want to be on the couch with my dog, crocheting and just kind of taking a minute to breathe and to think about things. I want to think things through multiple times before I can finally process them and kind of put them away. And that's kind of my space to do that. The Reconnect for Resilience training, honestly, I think helped me more than it helped my work with the kids. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but it's all connected, so it's fine. But just learning those rapid resets, like I was talking about earlier, and rebuilding neural pathways, and just those resiliency skills were huge for me. And just being able to recognize that when we have big emotional things happening, whether it's to us or to someone we love, in this case, me being one of my kids, and I have a physical reaction, that's something I have to pay attention to. And that's something that my body is saying, you're not okay. Like, you don't feel good right now. So then being able to think, okay, I feel that in my stomach. Well, if I feel that in my stomach, then I can drink a really cold glass of water to kind of get that feeling to go away. That training was just life-changing for me. I recommend everyone that's able to take it, do it just for yourself, not even for clients. But those are my big things. I think, too, especially during COVID, keeping a perspective. I'm not able to see the kids right now, and that breaks my heart. We are doing online stuff with them, but as we all know, it's just not the same. But just keeping that perspective of things, people have made it through things exactly like this before, and humans will continue to make it through those things, has been really helpful for me. So boundaries, crocheting with my dog, and talking to my loved ones are probably my big three.
So for those who've never had the Reconnect for Resilience training, I've had it, and it is very powerful. There's like 6 skills that you can call on when you need to. Connection, I'm looking to my wall because I actually have their poster on my wall. So connection, rapid reset, resource, redirect, highlight, and restore. And so they, I think they have a website with some of those things on them if you wanted to look up more about that. And then let me read you something from the chat, Kiersten. Someone wrote that they're very impressed with the work that WYN does and your clear passion for the mental well-being of young people. So I just wanted to share that with you because I knew you probably wouldn't see it. And then someone else asked for a link to their website, and I know Candace loves to provide links. So if she has time to do that, she might throw that up there for us. When you're talking, Kiersten, about part of your self-care is having the people that love you, that you trust, who you feel safe with, also help you with self-care. Last week when we were with Mary McKinney, she was talking about relational care and self-care. And one of the issues I've had with self-care is it feels like to me one more thing I'm supposed to be doing that I'm not doing. You know, I'm a perfectionist. And so if I'm not got it scheduled in and every day, then I'm a failure at it. And so I've been thinking more and more about how, you know, it's really something that we need support to be, you know, like if we have children, somebody's got to watch the kids if we want to go for a walk, or if we have to study, can we have a study partner so we can get through it faster so we have more time for ourselves. But one of the things that she was talking about is making sure that the people who we feel safe with know whether they're supposed to prompt us or remind us or not say anything at all, and that that's something that we have to work out with them. You have to be very clear about what your boundaries and needs are and express those and being okay with saying, you know, I'm not okay and this is what I need right now, which can be a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just, I have to giggle and I'm going to embarrass myself, but that's okay. It reminds me of when I first started at WYN. I knew what I was getting into from working with Maggie and my service learning and keeping up with her afterwards, but I kind of thought like, oh, I'm going to go in and I'm going to be fine because I didn't have any of these problems growing up, and I'm going to be fine. But you get immersed in it and you're so invested, that I would come home at the end of the day, and my fiance and I had just started dating at the time when I started working here, and I would come home and just stare at him, and he'd be like, what's going on? And I couldn't talk. Like, I was just in such a shut down space, and I literally had to like write it down and hand it to him, which sounds so silly now, but in the moment, I had never experienced that before, and that's just what I had to do. And he, God bless him, was so willing to meet me where I was, and to be patient with me in those moments, and we would talk it out. And as our relationship has strengthened and gone on, we've had a lot of those hard conversations of, you know, now it's again, I'm laughing because it's so not an issue now, but I can look at him and be like, I'm about to tell you something and I need you to fix it. Or I can look at him and say, I'm about to tell you something and I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen to me. And so it's part of our self-care to be able to tell those around our support system what we need. And to really do that work inside of ourselves, and then do that work to express it to others, and hopefully have them listen and respect that, for sure.
When we're doing the Calm Corner trainings, we tell kids, and I think this is true for adults, I know it's been true for me, when people are at their most upset and least able to talk is when we ask them the most questions. What did you do? What's going on? How are you going to fix it? What do I need to, should I be involved? Why don't you do this? And so when we've been doing the incredible 5-point scale, we've said to the people getting the training, this is so you can do numbers, so you don't have to use words, because when you most need them, you can't use words. And so that you're talking about, you know, I was unable to express in the moment what I needed. And so if we can give people a way to be, and now we do it to each other in the hall, the grown-ups do. When we trained at the high school, they talked about, we all have name badges, and like putting different numbers on. So when we're walking by, if we're at a 5 and we hold up a 5 to somebody, they're like, oh, instead of thinking, yeah, they hate me or I don't want to be in this department anymore, they're like, that person's at a 5. They can't talk right now. I'll check on them later, which not only is, you know, you're letting people, you're identifying your own emotions, but part of that relational care and community care is giving people the space they need, going to back and check on them later. So I definitely think it's so critical when we're in those moments of we're so distressed or elevated or dysregulated that we can't talk. What systems do we have to still be able to communicate what we need? Because you end up feeling so isolated and alone because you can't communicate. And so people don't know whether to come closer or back up, and then you feel abandoned or, you know, under siege. And so having that arrangement with people ahead of time seems like a really, really good way to try to take care of yourself. I
love that you all are doing that.
Yeah, I was glancing in the chat, but go ahead. I interrupted you. You can finish what you were saying.
Oh, I was just saying that I love that y'all, that as teachers and staff and faculty at the school do that, because we at WYN too have to, you know, it's just four of us, so I can't imagine what it's like in a school setting. But me as the lead programmer, I've had to say to new employees, like, if you're not okay, you've got to come up with, it can be a hand signal, it can be a look. We all, I think at this point, are just one solid brain working together when we're with the kids. But you have to take that pride of, no, I'm going to stay here in the thick of it, in the chaos. I'm going to get this kid to do this thing that I want him to do, whatever it is. And to be able to say, I need a break, I need a minute, I'll be right back, is huge, not just for the kids, not just for yourself, but for your team, so that you all can stay solid and have that united front in front of these kids. And the kids, I mean, with the checklist for success, we say, you guys see us walk away sometimes, and it's not a big deal. We just say, hey, I'll be right back. I'm going to go take 5 minutes, or I'm going to go get a drink of water. And I finally looked at one of my kids one day. I said, what do you think I'm doing when I do that? I'm not thirsty. Like, I just need a second. And they were kind of like, oh, okay. But yeah, adult communication, when it's a group of adults working with kids, is absolutely critical. And to trust each other in that way is awesome.
Yeah, identifying, that's one of the things we talk about. We talk about wellness. We're doing compassionate schools, is identifying who the adults that you're safe with. And that we don't want that just for kids, that as adults, we need to know which adults we're safe with, because often the adults we're forced to be around, or that we have relationships with, or that we love, or that our family, are not necessarily the ones that we trust and feel safe with. And so making sure we know who those people are, and that you go to people for help who are safe, that you can trust, and that you're not asking for help from people that you can't trust and be safe with. So we're about at 12:45. People have been putting comments in the chat. One of the things that somebody said was, at a school in Nashville, that the teachers and staff have a group text chat, and that they can text and ask someone to step in. We actually had talked at the high school about that, about teachers who are having big emotions or needing somebody to step in and take over. I'm not as involved at the high school as I am at Hardin Park, but as we've been working on compassionate schools here, we've had where teachers will call and say, I need somebody for a minute. I need to go to the bathroom and pull myself together. And so we try to be able to do that for each other. But that whole community care model of, we're the adults, and so we're supposed to always have it together. And it reminds me of a few years ago when we first started this, maybe 3, there was a fight in 5th grade. And so we were staffing at a student services, and, you know, what's happening to the kids, who got sent home, who's in ISS, were parents called. And it was a brand new framework for us of, what about the teachers? There were 2 teachers who physically had to break up the fight. That's probably the first time either one of them have done that. Nobody checked on them, because you're dealing with the kids. And so 3 of us went up to check on the teachers. It was after school, and as soon as we walked in, they started crying. And they were like, we don't know why we're crying. And we said, because it was intense. You know, we came to check on you. And so just for them to be able to tell the story, and to be like, and we're fine now, we just, you know, thank you for checking on us, kind of thing. So, you know, I feel so much like the teachers have the kids, and that a lot of what we need to be doing as part of the Compassionate Schools Project is somebody needs to have the teachers. And so just giving them a place to debrief and express how they feel. This is really stressful, challenging times. And I know it's difficult for y'all not being able to do your kids. I know you're trying to do virtual after school and those kinds of things, definitely not the same. So we're just all under a great deal of stress. And so I was going to give a few minutes if anybody had any comments or questions, things they wanted to ask Kiersten. We've got a few minutes to do that if anybody wants to chime in some thoughts.
I've got, hold on. Here I am. Hey, Kiersten, I've got a question.
Sure.
Are your mentors trained in any of the skills that you guys have?
That's an awesome question, Justin. We do give a Love and Logic kind of quick course during the 3-hour orientation for if you're wanting to be a mentor. We have school-based and we have community mentoring. Those are two different options for people that want to be mentors. As far as I know, there's not plans for motivational interviewing or Reconnect for Resilience, just because those are a lot more time consuming. Both of those are multiple days. So Love and Logic is kind of more of like, here's some tips and tricks to get your kid to listen to you and what to do when they don't. But other than that, yeah, we're kind of keeping it to Love and Logic right now.
And Justin, I don't know if you'll be with us on November 4th, but we're actually going to have the mentor coordinators from WYN with us on November 4th. So we'll be asking them all the same questions. That'd be a great question to ask them. I personally work with a lot of those mentors and have no idea what kind of training they have. So I'd love to hear them get to answer that question. If you can come back, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm also interested in becoming a mentor, and I'm curious as to when the next if they do like rolling admissions or how that works too. But I applied already, so it'll I can figure that out. It's no big deal.
And I think Candace had put the link to Western Youth Network in the chat box, but just for the heck of it, here's their phone number. If you want to write this down, that's 264-5174. And so not just community mentors, but we also partner with them to do lunch buddies in this school. Last check I think we had about 35 of those, and it's one of the coolest things ever. So obviously we can't do lunch buddies right now, but hopefully one day we'll get the kids back and we'll get to do lunch buddies again. So either one of those programs I'd highly, highly support. Again, you hear me say it all the time, the number one factor to offset trauma is a relationship with a positive, consistent, caring adult, whether that's a mentor or a lunch buddy or a youth leader or a volunteer coach. When you hear kids talking when they're grown, that's what they come back to, is the people that, were their positive connection in the midst of a lot of trauma. So those are so important. Any other thoughts? Several more things, Kiersten, about how great you are. Thank you for making a huge difference for the kids, and thanks for your work and how wonderful we are, me and you. And to thank us for doing such wonderful things for our community, and that it sounds amazing. Thanks so much. I appreciate you spending time with me, to Kiersten. Anything else you want to add that I didn't ask you about?
I don't think so. I do just want to say thank you so much to everyone that's saying such kind things in the comments. It means a lot. WYN definitely is kind of gaining in visibility in the county. So if you're ever interested in anything, I know Candace put our website in the chat, but it is westernyouth.network.org, and we'd love to answer any questions that anybody has anytime.
Thanks, Kiersten. And so next week, I'm getting ready to let y'all go so you can grab a snack or go to the bathroom before your next thing starts at 1. Next week, if I'm reading my calendar right, Laura and JB Birch are going to be with us talking about trauma support outside the professional setting. If you know them, you knew they do a lot of work in their community, and not just, I don't think they would consider it work. I would think they consider it mentoring and connecting and building relationships. So I'm excited to be talking to them next week, and I hope y'all can join us. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks again, Kiersten. Take good care.
Thanks, Denise. Talk to you soon.
Bye.